Okay, we are officially live for the podcast that we are every single week, and the Mets may be a very tough watch these days, but I will tell you that during a dream last night, I did see the light at the end of the tunnel, but apparently that light could also talk, and it told me to go fuck myself. So, episode number 53 of the Mets Weekly Podcast. Sorry, it's a little early for this. Mets-Dodgers series recap. We have loads, and I mean loads, to discuss live at this very moment on YouTube and on X. Let's get this one started. Here we go. Okay, well, we got to do it every single week. Our usual house cleaning. I want to remind everybody to subscribe to the Mets Weekly channel if you have not already for this very podcast that is now recorded live every Sunday and Thursday following every single series of games, no matter how bad the team is. For those of you who are watching on playback, in the future, hello to you. If you want to join the conversation, make sure to turn on those post notifications to know every single time that we go live. For those of you in the live chat right now, we want to let you guys know that we love reading your comments. We love reading your questions, your concerns. And if you feel like you are being ignored, you are not. They are just being starred throughout the show. And we will be sure to pull up as many as we can to keep the flow of the conversation. Also, make sure to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok, featuring this guy right next to me, his instant reactions after every single Mets game. Again, no matter how bad the team is, titled The Mets Frankly Post Game. And also, for those of you who are listening, I want to let you guys know that after every single stream, every single episode, they will always be available on all of our listening platforms at 9 a.m. the next day. So for those of you who want to know the usual schedule for the audio listeners, there you go. Okay, so I'd say this is probably the most eventful Mets days in a while. We've had loads of injuries, loads of drama, loads of blow-ups, loads of anger, frustration, so much. So, in a nutshell, in a vacuum, how is it feeling to watch this dumpster fire unfold right now, Frank? How do you feel?
I feel tired. I mean, it is an exhausting watch. And you know what's crazy is that historically the Mets have not been good in June, and June hasn't even started yet. It will in a couple of days. So recent history doesn't tell you that things are going to get better anytime soon, but the Mets, they kind of need some good news because, like you said, I mean, it's been one thing after another, and yesterday was definitely a really rough day. It could have been worse. They're lucky that the Pete Alonso x-rays, all that stuff came back for the most part pretty clean, just a bruise. If Alonso actually got hurt, in addition to Diaz going down, obviously the Lopez thing we're going to talk about in a few minutes, it was just a lot in one day. I mean, we've seen as Met fans a lot of chaos. We've seen a lot of just weird things happen that don't really happen to a lot of other teams, but I can't really recall ever seeing something like what we saw yesterday. I mean, even by Met standards, that was pretty extreme, honestly. The fact that a guy got fired essentially after a game because of his on the field antics, that's not something you see. And not just for the Mets, but just in baseball, in sports in general. Like, that's not a thing. Like, that's something that happens like in a workplace or whatever, not in professional sports. I just think it was just a really strange day. And again, it's like when you're watching it from the fan perspective, you can't feel very confident when you're watching the games. I mean, even when the team gets a lead, we've seen them blow so many big leads recently that you can never feel confident. I mean, when Reed Garrett is giving up grand slams, when the infield can't field a ball, when they walk the ballpark, I mean, like, they find so many different ways, like I've said on the post games. They find so many different ways to lose games. You're like, even when you have a lead, even when you're in a game, you're like, okay, well, how are they going to mess it up this time? Because they just keep finding different ways to lose, and they continue losing and falling further and further and further out of it. You know, I mean, this time last week or a couple weeks ago, they were 1 game back in the wild card. You look at the graphic we have on the screen right now, they're 6 games back with a lot of teams ahead of them. You know, so the route of just even being semi-competitive is just getting more and more challenging. And right now, where do you see the improvement coming from? I think that's the other thing that's concerning. It's like, okay, you know, Alvarez is going to begin a rehab assignment. That's good and all, but you're down Edwin Diaz. And now, even though Lopez was an absolute jerk yesterday, you're down him in the bullpen too. So with the way the pitching has struggled, I just can't see them turning around right now. I just think they're in a really, really bad spot.
I don't currently at this moment. I don't see, and then we'll obviously get into what's been boiling recently, but I think that I cannot really put my finger on the possibility of this team even being competitive for the rest of the season. And I'm not even really thinking that way. I think that I've really just aimed myself towards the future of this and pretty much tossed this season completely out. It's not really anything of how they are losing and their record shows it, or we're one of the worst teams in baseball, like Jorge Lopez wanted to specify. It's not the fact of that. It's just the fact that, like we've said, with them constantly finding different ways to lose, it's not just one thing. It is a lot deeper than this team on the field is not performing. They just look like they have completely given up. They look like they don't even want to be there. And that is not a good thing on the last day of May. And that is a problem. Now let's jump into the comments section here. Ibby, our fellow Mets podcaster here, he says bottoming out doesn't exist with this team. The bottom was never ending. Yeah. I mean, that's completely true. CP, another fellow Mets podcaster as well. What's going on with you? And, you know, I feel like when Mets fans look at the whole situation here, and I don't know if this is the feeling I get. I have never wanted to get to the trade deadline faster ever during a season. And I hate saying that because it's the end of May. We should be talking about how the team is performing, how some young guys are doing, the progression of some players. But all that we can really think about is blowing this entire thing up because it hasn't been working. It's been a disaster. Not to mention, even if this team wasn't doing well this year, they haven't done well last year. They haven't done well for a long time. This little core that we like to talk about, and we'll get into it, of course, this little core that we're talking about, they have won 0 playoff win. They have 0 playoff wins. If you want to count one playoff win, game 2 of the wild card, go ahead. But I consider a playoff win as a series win. They have not done that once. So whether you like your hometown guys or not, if they don't step it up, they don't show that they actually want to be here, there's going to be some massive, massive changes. And I hate saying that in May. It's not even June yet. June is at midnight today. And that's pretty sad that we have to do that right now. I understand we did not have high expectations for this team, but this is horrendous. They are terrible. Now, let's get into the main story that everybody's been talking about for the last 24 hours, and that has obviously been the whole situation with Jorge Lopez. Now, for those of you who missed it and basically gave up on the entire game, I wasn't watching it, but I saw a lot of stuff that went on in Twitter. I mean, it kind of made sense to me because that's just kind of like the entire trend that this team has been pretty much going on. But for those of you who have missed it, in the 8th inning yesterday, he was ejected for, I guess, arguing a check swing with third base umpire Ramon DeJesus. I don't know if he said anything. I personally don't even care. And on his way out towards the dugout to the clubhouse, he tossed his glove way into the crowd, untucked his jersey. He did basically everything but streak. Now, when you when they asked Jorge Lopez if he regrets his actions, he did say the following. He said, "I don't regret it. I think that I've been on the worst team in the possible in probably the whole fucking MLB. Whatever happened, happened. I've loved this game since I was a kid. It's nothing to feel bad about. I am who I am. I'm not afraid to be me." Now, also as the corresponding move, Jorge Lopez was designated for assignment after this outburst because after Carlos Mendoza, he said that this was not acceptable. Apparently, there was some miscommunication where he lied about not communicating before that interview or something. And then obviously his behavior on the field was what got him DFA'd, not calling this team the worst team in the league, which also has some speculation behind it as well. Maybe he didn't. But as the corresponding move, left-handed pitcher Danny Young has been called up from AAA Syracuse. So there's your roster move. There's your transaction there for what they do for Jorge Lopez. Now, I want to unpack all of this because I think that there was a lot of wrong, and then there was some right, and there was a lot that really connects to this entire situation. And I do think that, Frank, you did actually tell me this off stream about kind of the language barrier that was a little bit tough to understand with the media. And I'm kind of confused with it, but I mean, you can explain that a little bit more.
So again, keep in mind, like, I want to preface this with, as if you guys are loyal listeners, you know, I'm half Puerto Rican. Okay. So like with Jorge Lopez, the language barrier, I get it. It's how my family speaks. Like, I totally understand it. Yeah. So what happened is you have to keep in mind, English is not Jorge's first language. So that's the main thing to keep in mind. So he's trying to kind of express his feelings. Obviously, he's extremely frustrated. Anytime you're throwing your glove, your custom-made glove into the crowd, you got to be very aggravated. So Lopez is frustrated, and I feel like it's a combination of things. So first of all, he's frustrated, obviously, with how the team is playing. That's clear. And I think that kind of goes for everybody. You've seen that, just the body language of everyone. I mean, this is not the first reliever to have a blow-up. We've seen Diekman beating up coolers. We've seen iPads get beat up. The bullpen's been going through it this month. I mean, there's been just a lot of overall, just, again, bad body language, breakdowns, whatever you want to call it. There's been a lot of that going on with this team. So Lopez, when you get ejected out of the game, and, you know, he didn't really say much to the umpire. I mean, it was a bit surprising to see him get tossed. So you have that factored in as well. Like, you're just kind of annoyed that you got thrown out of a game when you really didn't deserve it. And now, you know, and so we get to the point where he says, I'm probably the worst teammate in the MLB, because the way it's worded, it doesn't really make sense. And now that when you actually read it, to say this is probably the worst team in the MLB, because the Mets have not been good. Like, we've been clear on that. But when you look at their record yesterday, there's still like 5 other teams that have a worse record than the Mets. Like, the White Sox had 15 wins yesterday. So, like, the Mets have been bad, but they're not actually the worst team in MLB, not yet, at least. I mean, they've kind of been on that trajectory with their play the past couple weeks. But when he says, I've probably been the worst teammate in the MLB, there's also that piece of, like, he had a bad outing yesterday, and he hasn't been very good this past week or so. I mean, with this DFA, his ERA was getting close to 4, and we don't put too much stock into reliever ERAs, but he's just been on a bit of a downtrend. I think he's been overworked, honestly. I feel like they've used him a lot. I'm pretty sure there was one point where he was like the most used reliever on the team pretty early in the season. So I think he feels bad as a
I mean, 26 innings in, what is it? Like, 26 innings pitched for a reliever in 2 months is a lot. Like, it is a lot.
It's a lot of appearances too. That's the other piece. It's not like he's coming in there once, 2, 3 innings, then you don't see him. It's like 1 inning a pop. So, I mean, you're seeing him 26 times in less than 60 games. So it's a lot for a reliever. But I think what he's trying to get is, I've probably been the worst teammate, is that, like, that was a really bad thing to do as a teammate. That made the whole team, the whole organization look bad when he threw the glove into the crowd. The part that confuses me, and the part that makes me the most aggravated, is that after the game, when Carlos Mendoza said, this is unacceptable, like, we cannot do this, They have a players meeting, which was initiated by Francisco Lindor. The least Lopez could do, at the minimum, is apologize for his actions. If what he's trying to say is that he's been the worst teammate, probably the worst teammate in the MLB, you have got to apologize for what you did on the field and making the organization and the team look bad. That's what he should have said. So that's the part that I'm getting torn up on, is that I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I want to say, okay, English is not your first language. There's no way you meant to say something that bad live into the media. Like, you can't just say, like, literally to the microphones, this is the worst effing team in MLB. You cannot say that. I mean, that is just, you want to talk about being a bad teammate.
Whether it's true or not.
Yeah, I mean,
whether it's true or not,
like,
you know.
Even when Tommy Pham made his comments about the Mets, at least he wasn't still on the team when he said that.
Yeah.
You can't be currently on the team saying they're the worst. I mean, that is just really, that's not a thing. Again, it's not a thing that people do. I mean, this is pretty unprecedented, what we saw yesterday from Jorge Lopez. Just overall, I mean, so between the glove incident, between what he said after the game, so whether, you know, he's trying to say that, like, what the media is saying, the way they quoted him was wrong, but it's like, those are the words that came out of his mouth. I mean, and again, if English is not your first language, it's tough, but ultimately that's what he said. And what kind of is interesting to me is that the Mets don't have like a translator there, a PR guy right there being like, hey, just kind of stepping in. I mean, you see that with some other organizations. I feel like it's a little more prevalent in basketball, where the PR guy is right next to the players and they will kind of be like, no, we're not answering that. Like, or like just kind of someone to help him out a little bit. I feel like he was kind of hung out to dry, and it was like, whatever he said, he's going to say. And, you know, based off of how quickly the Mets DFA'd him, I think the DFA decision was probably instant. Honestly, I feel like once you saw the glove going into the crowd, they're like, oh, he's gone. So I don't know if they really wanted to help him as far as PR and translator. I just think that the situation was handled. I mean, obviously what Lopez said was bad, but I think there are some things you can do as a team to kind of help him out in this situation, to make sure that the wrong things aren't said. Because again, from a PR perspective, whether he meant to say that or not, you can't have your players like, this is the worst team in the MLB. Like, someone has to be there to kind of step in. I really didn't like the way this was handled from both sides. And it's frustrating, you know. It's just, again, it's a bad look for the team. Everyone's just kind of joking on it, and, you know, it's all over everybody's accounts. Even, you know, non-Mets accounts are talking about this and posting the clips and things like that. It's just an embarrassing look. It's embarrassing for the team. It's embarrassing for the fans. Like, it's just been made a really tough time for everybody.
Yeah, and listen, I think that, you know, he could have been, you know, it could have been misheard. It absolutely could have been misheard. Again, English is not his first language. It's not that big of a deal to me as to where, you know, maybe they just misheard. We see things get taken out of context all the time, especially in the New York media. That's how that is. The problem that I have with this, and maybe there is a follow-up to this, I don't know. I did not see it. Maybe somebody can correct me in the chat if you can let me know. With Jorge Lopez, Steve Gelbs asked him to clarify what he was saying. And he said, did you say that this is the worst team in the MLB? And he goes, yeah, you can say that. Hold on. Wait a minute. Okay, maybe he did. Maybe he did, and we did mishear that. I don't know if maybe he did not understand what Gelbs said or didn't completely hear what Gelbs said. But Gelbs asked him to clarify it, and he said, yeah, basically. So I don't know. He did go on Instagram, and he said after the game, after he was DFA'd, he said, you know, the words were twisted. That's how the media are saying. Whatever. At the end of the day, whether it was or not, you do not publicly go on a rant about your own team that you are a part of. I mean, he wasn't a part of it like right after that interview, but you don't do that. I just
got to butt in real quick. So I'm reading some stuff about that's been reported, like with Mendoza and Lopez and everything. It says it right here that he doesn't say whether it was before or after comments. Mendoza said he doesn't know if language barrier was an issue. a representative for the Mets said Lopez did not request an interpreter. So, and as Mendoza, someone who is bilingual and speaks Spanish, like,
yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know.
It's
I don't
a
know.
bad look for a lot of people here. It's
definitely a bad look. I think that the Mets, listen, I think that at the end of the day, once everything happened and everything unraveled, you know, I think that they handled it the right way. They needed to move on from that, and they needed to you know, no nonsense in that way. You know, at the end of the day, you can't be throwing your glove into the crowd of frustration. Like, that personally is just unprofessional to me. Like, whether you're in the right or in the wrong or not. I'm not saying what he said or supposedly said was wrong. I mean, I think that there's a lot of Mets fans out there who are like, okay, well, he's telling the truth, so let's keep him. Not really like that. Not really the situation. Not really it. But again, we understand the frustration. It's definitely warranted. But if you're going to open your mouth like that about the organization and do something as embarrassing as you did, whether the team is good or not, I don't care how good they are, that's unacceptable. That can't happen. And that type of behavior is not allowed. Now, does this make me want to shift this discussion into another player that shows his frustration all the time that I really want to get into? I mean, it's just me and you here. So do you want to get into it? I don't know if you want to do that, because
unless the people have other questions about Lopez,
yeah,
we could talk about,
because this is an entirely different discussion. I think, like, because listen, I've been open about my displeasure with Jeff McNeil. Okay, I've definitely become very, very frustrated with him as a whole, not as a player, not as just as a person in general. I've just really become very annoyed by Jeff McNeil overall. Every single thing that he does really pisses me off. I really do have a main gripe with Jeff McNeil, because I feel like the attitude that he displays gets very, very put in a spotlight of, well, nothing's going my way. I've been here forever and I've seen things that don't go my way, and I'm going to just keep continuing to do it. And that's what really pisses me off with Jeff McNeil. And listen, if you're and then there's some Braves fans in the chat. If you find this hilarious, the Mets are a hilarious team. They've always been a hilarious team. So again, I think that at the end of the day, if you're a Braves fan, you're enjoying this, welcome. Welcome to the shit show. We're here with you. We agree with you. A lot of things have to change. We agree that we're probably 5 or 6 years away from actually competing in this division at one point. I mean, it's a mess. It definitely is a mess. Frank?
Yeah, I just went back and listened to it again. And again, there is a part of me in the accent when I hear it again. When you say Team N, that's like with Puerto Rican accent.
Yeah.
You say it. You could hear either way. You could hear team in or teammate. And when he says teammate, you could hear either or. So I don't know. I mean, that, because again, with the beginning of the sentence, it makes more sense saying teammate than I was saying I've probably been in the worst. Like that's not proper
I don't
English.
know.
So I don't know. It's tough. It really is tough. But again, for Mendoza to not really help him out, or like, I don't know. Like, it's weird.
I'm not sure. I think that the damage was already done by that time. I think that the DFA was already
it was going to happen regardless
before he even got the interview.
I think that the further damage of him just as a person and again a teammate, I just don't think the Mets as an organization, particularly Mendoza, haven't been doing him any favors.
Yeah, and listen, and there's a Brave fan in here. He's like, I've actually respected that you replied. Listen, we're here to tell you like it is. Yeah. If we don't like something that the Mets do, we don't like it.
We're extremely complimentary of the Braves, and I'm jealous of how good the Braves have it, of their process. Yeah. I mean, that's really what we're trying to get at, is the process with the Mets is very flawed. And I talked about it on last Thursday, but how the way the Braves have this system of like, okay, everyone signs 10-year extensions and everybody's young and everybody hits. Like, that's the ultimate goal of what an organization.
That's a sustainable winner right there.
Something the Mets could do.
They're a contender every year.
Exactly. It's like, and we're fighting for our lives every year. Like, we can be able to retain Nimmo, we can be able to retain Alonso. Like, it's these dialogues that we have every single year, all year, because we don't.
And that's more of just the mess of what was left.
Yeah.
But again, it's more as to where he's asking us, let me ask you, any Mets players would you consider trading to the Braves? And actually,
well, the thing is that
to be honest,
we're not the ones who are responsible for making the trades. I don't think. And well, and here's the thing. It goes two ways. The Braves don't make trades with the Mets. They don't trade players to the Mets, and Mets don't trade players to the Braves.
Excuse me, Kelly Johnson, Juan Uribe? Come on now.
Well, there was that one time when the Braves actually had a down year. But you think about how with Joey Wendell, for example, like the Mets DFA him and the Braves just sign him or claim him. Like, that's I could definitely see Lopez going to the Braves.
I wouldn't be surprised if Jorge Lopez is a Brave.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't even matter. The Braves are getting these guys for free, essentially. So why would you want to trade for the Mets? The Mets are just going to get rid of them. You get them for free.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I would say that in terms of any Mets players that I would consider trading to the Braves, I've already accepted that this team is not going to compete for the next, 3-4 years with the Braves or the Phillies, or, they're going to be in this tight-knit mid-purgatory for a while with the Nationals and, hovering towards the Marlins, who are a mess right now. But because I personally think that I don't really care who we trade anybody to, if it's in division or anywhere, because it's not going to affect us in 5 years. So I am fine trading anybody to the Braves. I mean, there's maybe a few that I wouldn't like to trade to the Braves, obviously. Maybe obviously the prospects, the younger guys. But I mean, I will get into this eventually come trade deadline. They don't have Acuna anymore. Acuna's out, which is just heartbreaking. Let's just be real for a second. I mean, that's an electrifying player that baseball needs. But they don't have Acuna. I would make Starling Marte available to the Braves. I would. I think that would be a perfect fit, to be honest. We'll cover some of the contract, and they could give us some, maybe a hitting prospect or two, which we desperately need. The Braves.
For who?
Marte.
Oh, for the Acuna injury? That would work. I mean, that's interesting.
Yeah. And we'll get into that.
I don't know. I just don't think Marte's hitting profile really fits what the Braves do, because the Braves actually stress.
But Marte has tools, and they like players with tools.
I mean, he stresses.
So that's the bottom half of the lineup.
I mean, the Braves stress pulling fly balls, hitting for the fences. Met players don't do that, so I don't really know.
They had Orlando Arcia. They taught him how to pull fly balls. They taught him to prioritize quality of contact.
And that's so frustrating with Marte is that
they know how to maximize talent. Yeah,
Marte has the power to do it. He just doesn't routinely do it. Like, he gets good max exit velos. It just rarely happens.
His pitch recognition has declined a lot. It's just declined a lot. But I would say that probably would be. I would say that probably would be the best. The best fit. Well, again,
some of us want.
And it looks like our Braves fan in the chat right now is okay with it. And he said, "What's up with the Acuna brother?" We'll actually get into him later in the show, because we're going to talk about. Yeah, he's definitely pushing his way into the major leagues. I don't think. I mean, I don't think it takes much to be considered a major league caliber player on this team right now, currently as they're playing,
with them not having a traditional middle infielder back.
Yeah, as well, and we'll get into that as well. But I think that with Jorge Lopez, to wrap this thing up, I am hoping, and I said this on Twitter, I am hoping that they do get something back for him that isn't cash. I'm hoping that, because it's $2 million. You don't really need to, you don't really need to cover much. You could dumb it down to, the Mets could cover a salary, dumb it down to league minimum, and send him somewhere else and get a prospect in return. Kind of like what they did. Was it Billy McKinney? I think they got somebody back. I think it was like Carlos Rincon or something. Never panned out, but it was an outfield prospect.
It's interesting to me because, like, while there is some talent in Lopez, I just can't see a team chopping at the bit to get him right now. I just think that, like...
I think that, like, at 50th percentile, at his typical, he's a good reliever.
I know, but there's something to be said of, like, that kind of personality where, like, you have a team meeting, your manager says unacceptable, you still don't apologize. Like, you know, I mean, we talk so much about, like, people getting along, vibes, but there is something to, like, clubhouse chemistry, and that's the kind of guy who it seems like could really tear you down with that kind of just... Again, just the persona, again, just overall, like, the vibes that comes across, it's just very negative and not a team player at all.
Yeah, obviously, and it is a shame, to be honest. I don't know. I wish him the best. It really is a shame because I really was rooting for him to bounce back because I know that he can be one of these electrifying relievers at his best, and you know. It stinks, you know, some people just waste the talent like that they have. And you know what? I mean, we have tons of examples of that in sports. We can go on and on for that, but nobody has time for that. So obviously, speaking of the state of the team, and I think what really got overlapped by the whole Lopez situation, not to mention all the other news that went on yesterday, was David Stearns. He did have a press conference a few weeks ago, and he did... have a few comments about the future of the team, the current state of the team. And I do want to obviously start with the current state because I think that, you know, the trade deadline is, you know, still far away and it's not as relevant yet. You can't really do much. So let's bring in some quotes from the boss man. He spoke the other day and he talked about the current state of the 2024 Mets roster. And he said, look, we have not played like a playoff team, and that's the reality. That doesn't mean we won't, but we've got to show it. We have a group of players that are determined to play better. Whoops, with the typo there. And then also he was asked about the upcoming plans of the trade deadline, and he said that throughout the month of July, you are preparing for the deadline and having conversations. I think every single year takes on a different pace. Every single year takes on a little bit different character for the deadline, but throughout the month of July, you're prepared. You also don't need to make decisions until the end of the month, so we'll continue to evaluate where we are. He was also talked about the Mets' long-term vision, and he's pretty much kept that pretty much consistent and saying that our goal is to create an organization that is competing at a championship caliber level for a long time. We've continued to take steps towards that goal, and that might put a sour taste in some typical Mets fans' mouth. I do think it does because right now they're not showing it. They really are not showing that, you know, they want to be the long-term winner or they want to be a winning organization. But I think that this is kind of the rollover pains from whether you call it Epler or Scott or Porter or Brodie Van Wegenen. It's most of the pain and suffering and tough things that you're seeing right now. The growing pains, most of it has been carried away from things that he can't really control, and he's kind of taking into reality. And I think that that's the only way that you can really defend it. I don't really think that at the end of the day, a president of baseball operations is not going to go up there, whether you want him to or not. Same thing goes with what Jorge Lopez did. He's not going to go up there and say, yeah, this team sucks. It's not going to happen. You know, he's not going to do that. Would I expect a Mets GM to do that with our history of idiots? No. But yes. Yes, I do expect that possibly to happen with our history of idiots. But David Stearns is a smart guy. He knows what he's talking about. And whether you do see how painful it has been, most of it is more of what he has inherited. And not to mention, it's not just the roster, it's more of just the entire organization. And I think that the long-term vision here doesn't really have much to do with the problems that you see on the field right now. I think it gets a little bit confused and it gets a little interwired. Now, Jorge Lopez was a David Stearns signing. Let's say that. I mean, yeah. But Again, he has no control over what his players are doing out the field. He is supposed to evaluate them. He evaluated him throwing his glove into the stands and said, "Okay, that's not acceptable. You're out of here. Done. Move on. Doesn't matter if you're making $2 million, $10 million. Move on." So, from Stearns' comments about the Mets going forward, I mean, what would you unpack from that? Because, Frank, I think you told me that you did not see much from his press conference.
Yeah, I mean,
from
I
those
heard,
quotes,
yeah,
I mean,
I heard
how do you feel from that?
I heard him speak during the Giants game. He was in the radio booth with Howie. But what really stands out to me is more so the idea of building the team with a long-term vision. And when I look at what they did in the offseason, that's where it gets kind of tricky, because when you sign so many guys to one-year deals, that's not really building a team for the long term. But to the same point, you don't want to just give everyone multi-year deals. So what I'm curious to see what happens now is that we talked about this idea of like, okay, you have two options. Like, you sign these one-year deals, these guys pan out, and then, okay, you have a pretty competitive team at the deadline. You can make some moves to improve your team. But if it doesn't go well, since these guys are one-year deals, you could just kind of trade them away, get young pieces back, what have you. And that's the route that they're going to have to go. But when I look at the kind of season that Luis Severino's been having and some of the good starts that Sean Manaea has had, I'm like, there are some guys I'm like, I wouldn't mind keeping for a couple more years, but I just don't know if, seeing the way things have gone, you trade them away.
Is that the Severinos, the problem is the Severinos and Manaeas, they're not transition players, and you can't really keep them for long term, as to where, you know, they're in the prime of their careers. They're in their 30s. They're ready to win. You can't really keep that as to where, oh, we're just going to keep these guys along for the next 3 years. We'll sign them for 3 years, 4 years. Like, they kind of need to let them go. Like that just in the current moment. I think that they are great pieces. They can help you win. But in this current moment, I'm like, you can't. It's the reality. Like, you know, they got to get something back for them in the current moment. They can't just wait it out. You know, it's not like Lindor, who's locked down here forever, or Nimmo, or, you know, I think that they're on a one-year deal. You got to get something back for them, you know?
Yeah. And that's kind of, you know, where it gets kind of interesting is that, like, okay, well then, you know, you sign these guys to one-year deals, but then where does that long-term come from? And, you know, I think it has to be developing the young pieces. I mean, the only thing that I think is to be encouraged by is what you see from Christian Scott, what you're seeing from Blade right now, and what you're seeing from Brandon. You know, I think those are got to be the core three, in my opinion, because right now Senga is a question mark for multiple reasons. Number one, he needs to get on the field this year. But number two, is he going to opt out? And what's his long-term?
He doesn't get that opt-out until 400 innings pitched in 3 years.
So
that's probably not going to happen.
But to the same extent, I mean, look at what's happened with Edwin Diaz. I mean, we don't know what version of Senga we're even getting if he comes back this year. Like, what version are we even getting? So do we want to give him another contract after that when he's already going to be in his 30s? Like, that's where things get very tough as far as like that long term. And, you know, the other really big piece is Pete Alonso. I mean, that's the next like potential long-term piece. If you're trading him away, if you're not going to give him a contract extension, and we're talking about this idea of maybe trading Marte to Atlanta, trading McNeil to Seattle, or anywhere, a lot of your long-term pieces are going away. And right now it's like, do some of these guys, you know, again, he just stands out to me, but Harrison Bader's on a one-year deal. Let's say you traded him. You're not going to get a phenomenal long-term building block prospect back for him. So it's like, where are the long-term pieces, the additional long-term pieces going to come
I think that's what they want to evaluate. I think that's what they really do want to evaluate within internal. They have to fix this internally before they go externally. Like, next year, I understand there's that big free agent on the market. I get it. Mr. Juan Soto, man's incredible. That's not going to fix anything. You have to fix things internally before you go externally. And there is a lot, and I mean a black hole size of problems from top to bottom here. And I think that it's gotten so bad. It's gotten to a point where not only do you have to get rid of those coaches or people in the organization that have been the cause of a lot of these problems, you also have to get rid of those players that they've ruined and that they have not done well with. That's how deep and how bad it's become, that they need to pretty much blow this entire thing up. And I don't mean the entire 40-man roster. I mean blowing up the entire organization and starting from the bottom. And this may really sound this may sound sucky to a lot of Mets fans who, maybe they're 80 years old and, they want to see a championship again. But I have come to the mindset where this has gotten so bad. Like I've said, 0 playoff wins in the last 9 years. It has gotten so bad. The Mets cannot survive like this. If this means 5 more years of sucking just to get a sustainable winner, so be it. I don't care. If they are going to suck, go ahead and suck. If that means that they will be eventually a sustainable winner, if they want to do what the Baltimore Orioles did, do it. Because what's 5 more years after 9 more years of sucking and not winning a single playoff series? And listen, I understand Mets fans, they just want to get the big fish. They want to build the team. They want to play Diamond Dynasty. I get it. But you've come to a point where you've damaged this thing so much that the dead horse has to be scraped off the platform at this point. You have to, and I hate it. I hate the fact that maybe that talks about, blowing this up and some players that we've loved for years going. I get it. But at the end of the day, this is a business side of baseball, and the business has failed for the last 9 years.
Yeah, and I think, what's just so puzzling to me is the infield defense. I just don't know. I don't know what's happened. I really don't. Today they did early infield work for the first time, and I'm just like, I don't know. There's just something about the way they mess up so many routine plays that I just and it's what's weird is that the personnel has not changed, and that's what's so weird to me is that I don't remember if it was on SNY or on the radio that I heard the broadcast talking about, like, the Mets wanted to help the run prevention. They signed Harrison Bader, they signed Tyrone Taylor, and I'm like, those guys have been fine in the outfield. But that doesn't fix the problem with the defense is the infield. And that personnel has stayed exactly the same. And
all right, let me start making some excuses. You ready? If Mets fans like to make.
Yeah, go for it.
Do you think that all the other players got jealous of these good defenders in Taylor and Bader, that they just stopped playing bad? I think that.
Yeah, I mean, I've always
just a mess.
I've always had concerns about Pete's throwing arm accuracy. I mean, that is it's not good.
Yeah,
there's no doubt about it.
He's a first baseman. That's the worst defensive position. One of the worst defensive positions on the field. He's an offensive first baseman. As of right now, the offense has not been what his offense is. And listen, in regards to Pete for the future, we also did get some other stuff from David Stearns, and of the current roster, he did talk about this. And first, along the bottom here, for those of you, the audio listeners, about the upcoming free agency of Pete Alonso. Obviously, the time frame has not really changed because, again, he did kind of put in that July piece to where they're talking about the trade deadline. But, David Stearns pretty much, and I quote, and he said, nothing has changed on the Mets Pete situation. Our goal on a daily basis is to help Pete succeed as much as he can, so we can win as many games as possible. And that's what I expect we'll continue to do. Now, obviously, other things with the roster construction, they also talked about rostering both. He also talked about rostering both Mark Vientos and Brett Beatty, which obviously is a little unconventional because you kind of have this situation where Lindor and McNeil are pretty much just going to be playing every single day. And if they get hurt, they're going to pull a fan from the stands at this rate. So that's how really bad it's become. And he said that I think that we have two players who deserve to be in the bigs. And that's why they're here right now. I've been persistent that this present roster construction cannot last in perpetuity. At some point, we're going to get slightly more conventional. Right now, I think it's the best for their development to be here. Also, with the Kodai Senga return, speaking of that, also roster construction we can put in there, but I think we pretty much know the whole situation with him as of right now. It's going to be a little bit later than we obviously expected back in spring training. He said, I don't have a definite timeline there. I wish I did. Clearly, in any time frame I've given, we've blown past. So I'm not going to speculate going forward, but I do know he is working very hard to get back out there as soon as possible. So there are some of the current roster situations regarding Alonso, the Beatty Vientos platoon, I guess you're going to call it right there. And then obviously the situation with Kodai Senga, which continues to kind of just be in the dust right now. We don't really know what's going to happen with there. So, I mean, in terms of this current roster of how it is constructing, I mean, Frank, I'll start off with the Pete Alonso situation. I think that it's become very polarizing for a lot of Mets fans. Do they want to keep him? Do they want to keep him long term? Do they want to trade him? Do they just not like his attitude? Is he a cancer to this team? I think that every single week this is going to continue to be a conversation no matter what with his future on the team because, you know, he's been one of the faces of this team for a long time. Frank, what is your current stance on this? Because I think that this changes every single day in terms of the condition it is in.
Yeah, my stance from way back when has been that the Mets put themselves in this situation. You know, I've been saying it. I think the first thing that Steve Cohen should have done when he got here was giving Pete Alonso an extension. You could have got out in front of this. You could have gone for way cheaper, and you'd just be avoiding all of this dialogue. And I just think Pete'd be playing better if he felt more comfortable. Like, I know where I'm going to be. I know where I am. And again, I've talked about it last week, but the mental side of like, am I going to get traded because they don't want to pay me? That's not a fun thing. When this is your home, you're homegrown. Like, it's not a good situation. I mean, we've seen Wilmer Flores cry. We saw Michael Conforto cry. You know, like it's a tough spot to be in.
No, you know? He didn't cry. He just had something in his eye. He just had something in his eye. Come on.
You know, so it's a tough situation for him. But my stance has always been that this team is better with Pete Alonso on it than not on it. We've talked so much about what's the alternative. I don't think it's Mark Vientos. I don't think it's Christian Walker. You know, so many different weird names that we've heard. It's Pete. I just don't like the idea of, okay, let me risk bringing in someone new to the organization who's never played as a Met before, never played well as a Met before, and see what happens. I just don't think that's the right approach. I think that you got to really cherish those guys who have done well in Met uniforms. And Pete, you know, prior to this year, he's been carrying the Mets offense for a long time. I still think that, you know, a different situation with a contract already happening, he's probably playing better than he has this year. I think that just looking at the problems with the entire team offensively, I wonder if he'd benefit from some different coaching, hitting coaching in particular. I think that when you have an entire team of guys who are more talented and are underperforming, at some point you have to look at the coaching staff. So I don't like the philosophies that they have. We've talked about that a lot. The approach with a lot of these guys is not the right approach. I mean, there was a really nice comment that we had in here about the way the Mets are looking at pitches as far as like they don't do well in the heart of the zone. Like stuff like it's just like they have a lot of weird issues as a team offensively. So, I mean, I think that a lot of those things are a problem. But for me, I would be trying to keep him. I think that even though I say Jeff McNeil is my favorite player and what have you, I would be much more willing to trade McNeil and keep Pete than the other way around, and I know Jeff doesn't have the value he did, but I think that, one of the other parts that kind of goes into like this whole rebuild, the long-term goal, Justin Verlander pitched a really good game last night for Houston. The Mets are probably going to be paying that option, so there's still like just these other, and it's like we talked about with Stearns, he's coming into a tough situation where it's like these previous mistakes from previous regimes, you're still paying the price for. So, that also factors into the Pete thing is that, okay, well, we still have the Verlander money. Obviously, we have the Lindor money, the Nimmo money, and the Steve Cohen. So it shouldn't be a problem. But, there are just like these.
It's hard to sustain no matter what. It really
tough.
is.
And then there's that conversation of it's tough to prioritize who you have when your team is this bad. It's like, why would you spend so much money on a team that's absolutely terrible? And obviously Diaz also factors into that. Like, he's here long-term and not playing well right now. He's hurt, but it's like you have and Marte, like you have a lot of guys who are here for multiple years who just aren't providing much value. And I don't think that you should use that as an excuse to not prioritize Pete Alonso for someone who has been very good. And even with the down year he's had, like I've said, he's still projected for over 30 home runs. Like, and all in all, like his OPS plus and everything is not far off from last year. Like, when it's all said and done, he's still
that's mainly because the league average is so bad.
Yeah, and listen, there's a lot of players that are struggling, but I think that when it's all said and done, he's still going to have a good year, if he's healthy. So that's
still the
where
800 OPS. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like that's where I don't really understand this whole like he's so bad and they shouldn't retain him because the batting average is low. But I think the batting average is still better than what it was last year, and no one was saying that last year. So I just think that he has this extra microscope on him now. To me, I would still be trying to keep him, and I think that it's like you said. Right now, they're in a tough spot where they are kind of handicapped in a way where it's like you have to let a lot of this stuff kind of play out, a lot of this stuff kind of expire, honestly, with some of these contracts before you can kind of make some of these other moves. I saw Alex Bregman in the chat earlier. I've been a fan of adding Alex Bregman, but right now, absolutely not. I just think this team, like we've talked about,
I don't see any of these big.
Like they have so many other things to fix. They can't add on another big contract right now.
Again, I don't. I really wouldn't mind if they literally just signed 2 free agents this offseason.
Yeah, they gotta get younger. Right now, really if this team was playing much better, and
adding another 28 to 30-year-old is not going to help it. It really just isn't.
Yeah. So we'll see. And
listen, I think that with Pete, I think that as the season has gone on, I've become a little bit more of an open book as to what they do with Pete Alonso, because yes, he is a big factor here. But when I talk about, it's a strong possibility that maybe we don't compete for the next 3 or 4 years. Maybe we do suck like the Orioles sucked to get their draft picks or whatever high or whatever. It's a different story, obviously, with the draft lottery. But, when I look at it, I need to see this guy play better. I really do need to see this guy play better in order to be like, yeah, I guarantee I'm going to give this guy 7 years. I'm okay with them keeping Pete Alonso long-term. If they want to do that, go ahead. But I have definitely tilted towards the possibility where I'm also okay with them not. I really am not. Because at this very point, like I've said, to the deepest core, there's a lot of issues that are going on with this team. And I'm really frustrated as to where, to face reality, you need to start from the bottom, but you also have to blow it up from the top as well. Because there's no way you can start it up at the bottom of the organization and then also have because that's what the Mets have kind of been doing for the last few years. It's just not going to sustain.
Here's a question I have. And it goes back to what Lindor was saying about with Cleveland, I miss winning and what have you. If they don't re-sign Pete and they fully blow it up, do you really see Lindor sticking around for another however many years to be on a losing team?
I have $341 million reasons why he would.
I'm just saying I feel like he'd be asking for a trade at that point. I really do. I don't see him sticking around.
And if he does...
Oh, by all means, sure.
We got tons of shortstops. We draft all these shortstops.
By all means, get that contract off your books if you're rebuilding, because he has.
And if he does again,
offensively,
so be it. I have no hardware that shows me otherwise. So if he wants out, he can want out. Fine. He's not very movable. And I'll get into that in this tweet I just posted before this stream started. But at the end of the day, anybody that wants to go, wants out, they haven't won anything for me to fight for them to stay here. They just haven't. Like I'm fed up. I'm really fed up as to where, you constantly see these inconsistencies on the field. You constantly see these issues. At some point, the Mets need to realize, and I think that's why, David Stearns is here. The Mets need to realize, and David Stearns needs to establish that what has been going on for the past few years, what has been going on for almost a decade, they can't survive like this. They just can't. Every single year, you're always like, oh, the Braves, the Phillies, guaranteed they've been in the playoffs since April. The Mets were always like, I don't know. Is this the year? Is it not? Does this break well? Do we get this luck? If Citi Field can stop being built on an ancient burial ground that's cursed, if Timmy Trumpet can stop going out there and performing and cursing the team, the City Connects are cursed. You can't go on like that. You got to face reality and realize that you're the problem. The Mets are the problem. And it's been established from player development. You can talk about the Justin Turners. You could talk about the Daniel Murphys. And listen, I'm also come to the point where, I don't know if Ibby's still in here, but on his show, he was talking about, the fear of Brett Beatty going somewhere else and succeeding. If he does, so be it. Again, and if he does, go ahead. I don't, because that's continued to be the trend. What's one more? What is one more when that continues to be the trend? So why don't we actually address it internally and stop trying to fix these little problems with little plugins? I am in full support of a full rebuild if they want to do that. Maybe some aren't, but to actually become a sustainable winner, if you're mad at the Braves for how good they are every year, if you're mad at how good the Phillies have become, that's how you do it. And the Mets, for some reason, they just really have refused to get that started. Mainly because they're scared of the criticism they're going to get and the rebellion you're going to get to the fans. You're going to literally have a bunch of protests in the streets, people lighting things on fire in front of Citi Field. It's possible that could happen. But once again, like I said, at the beginning of the year, with David Stearns, they needed a year like this. They needed a year like this to evaluate everything internally, evaluate some things externally. At the end of the day, the Mets need to realize that they are the problem. It's not that all the pure Mets can do no wrong. It's not that David Stearns comes in here and the team's a mess. It's his fault. It's not that Carlos Mendoza has been managing for a few months. It's his fault. The Mets haven't committed to anything long term, and they need to build it. They need to build it up from the ground up. And if that means saying goodbye to our homegrown sweethearts in Alonso and McNeil, so freaking be it. Because I am tired of every single year being, I don't know what's going to happen here, what's going to explode, who's going to kill someone, what Mets fan's going to jump off a bridge. I'm tired of it. I am so tired of the let's fix this with a quick fix, and when it blows up in our face, we're going to blame everybody around us and nothing's going to happen. Tired of it. I'm done. I've had it. I've just freaking had it. And I'm going to go into the tweet that I obviously posted here. And I said that on Thursday, May 30th, which is when this is getting recorded, at 3:06 p.m. Eastern Time, that's when the tweet was posted, I said, here is every player on the Mets 40-man roster that I want back in 2025. This is my current thought at this current moment. Now I have 4 guys that aren't expendable, that you can't really move in the realistic sense. Nimmo, Lindor, Senga, because he's injured, there's no value there. And the same thing goes with Edwin Diaz. You can't really do much there. Then you have Alvarez, Mauricio, Christian Scott. That's it. Everybody else is either up for grabs and or replaceable. And I just need them to tear this entire thing down. Just tear it down.
40-man you're talking about, right?
On the entire 40-man roster.
I agree with that list. Yeah.
Would I like to say, oh, Alex Ramirez? Again, that's just all technicalities. Yeah. Would I like to troll and put Tylor Megill in there? Sure. But he's going into his 30s. You could get something back for him if it's the right price. Yeah. Same goes for David Peterson. The same goes for that. They need to blow every single thing up. Not only the people, the coaches that have not done well and not executed well coaching for player development, but also it's come to the point where you have to get rid of the pieces that they have ruined. That's how you need to break it up to the studs. I mean, it's just at this point, listen, you can disagree with me. I know there's some people disagreeing in the chat. I get it. But they can't survive like this anymore. They can't. They are on life support every single year, plugging in these little pieces. It's enough already. Not to mention, we have Steve Cohen's money. He can spend whatever the hell he wants. But at the end of the day, from the outside of what you've seen these last 3 days, what you saw yesterday, you think Juan Soto's looking at this and saying, yeah, I want to come here?
Did you watch 2008 through 2014 of the team that was all in and try to add a bunch of veteran players for these simple fixes? How did that work out? Oof, not too well. I think that right now they've tried.
I think when they talk about free agents, every Mets fan has this vision of 06 where everything clicked. Every single thing clicked. And it would have clicked completely if it wasn't for that bitch of a lefty who threw a cookie down the middle of Yadier Molina. I get it. But that was 18 years ago.
Yeah. And the Mets, they tried. They were way above the tax when they had Verlander here and Scherzer here and all these guys here. They went for it. And it did not go well. They still, like Carson said, they still couldn't win a playoff series. And particularly because those guys didn't get the job
really want to do that
done.
Again?
You
really want to get another Scherzer and another Verlander?
What happens is that when you stay over the cap like that and you're paying these veterans way too much money based on what they did in the past, your draft picks are also getting pushed further back, which makes it harder to build that long-term winner. So it's just, again.
I mean, that I kind of disagree with, mainly because I think that, if you draft well, you draft well. It doesn't really matter what slot you're in. I think it's a little suspect. Yeah.
With the farm system they have, they need all the help they can get. They need the most. Yeah. They need the best cracks at it
to take the best available. Obviously, yeah. I get it. Obviously, but again, this is I think that it starts at the draft, obviously, which is going to be I think in July, the All-Star break or something like that. Which apparently, the All-Star break. What is it? It's still like 6 weeks away.
Yeah,
we're dying here.
Yeah.
And I think that, at one point, you just got to look at it as they're the issue. They've become the issue. And it has deteriorated for a long time. And I know that Mets fans don't want to hear it. And I know they just want to get Juan Soto and get Anthony Santander. I love Anthony Santander. They want to get Corbin Burns. They want to get Max Fried. That's not going to fix anything. It's not going to fix anything. It just won't. It'll make your team look good in Diamond Dynasty. That's a video game. This is real life. So at the end of the day, you know, we have somebody coming in. How It's Made is saying that my man in the beginning said his dream told him to go fuck himself. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Because the Mets do that every single time. For those of you who don't know why I do all those weird intros, I'm a huge fan of The Office, so I love the cold opens. Yeah, I would sign Eovaldi in the offseason. Like, that's what I mean. It's like it's just piecing things together.
We've talked about Nate on this channel for years. We all love Eovaldi.
Too late.
He's turning
too late
35
for Nate.
Yeah, like he's turning 35 next season. And it's like after Eovaldi, you still have a whole, with all the short-term deals the Mets have right now, you still have a whole other rotation to build. Like you're going to have Scott, maybe Blade. Like, I don't know about Brandon be there too, but it's like, you're still gonna need a whole nother rotation and a bullpen, and there's plenty of lineup spots that need to be filled.
They just can't keep surviving. They can't survive like this.
Yeah, like
they just can't.
It's gonna take a lot more.
They can't survive like this. I think that it really showed that the Mets really wanted to evaluate things this year, but you just had so many fans pushing. Get JD Martinez. Just get JD Martinez. And they waited it out forever. But they finally gave in and got him. And, like, has that made a difference? No. Would a JD Martinez made a difference if he was 32 instead of 36? Maybe a little bit more. But again, when they talk about getting stars, it's usually when they're past their prime. You know, and they get shocked when this doesn't happen. You know.
I hope you're joking. When Trevor Bauer threw the ball over the center field wall, I mean, think of what we just saw Jorge Lopez. That would not be the solution right now. They don't need another person.
And again, listen, I think that, and it's okay. And it's okay to want to fill in a roster and want to get these players. I'm not saying it's wrong. Okay.
They have,
but what I'm saying is they have too many issues internally to look at anything externally.
Yeah,
it's a problem. It really is a problem. It goes beyond the team just sucking. It goes way beyond that. And I think that at the end of the day, if sucking for the next 4 years means that they become a sustainable winner, so be it. I'm already going bald. I'm fine with that progressing. I think at this point, you got to give into it. You got to give into the fact that this isn't working. This is not working. And maybe they make us eat our words next week. Maybe they go on a 10-game winning streak. Doubt it. Have they showed you any possibility that they're going to do that? No. I mean, how many times can you get tricked by the same bill of goods?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you a basketball example of the organization I like to watch, how they do business. And the Mets don't have an excuse here because they're a totally different market. But you look at what the Oklahoma City Thunder did when they traded away Russell Westbrook and Paul George and then Chris Paul, like a bunch of stars, like guys, you're like, oh my gosh, all these guys on one team, like trade them all away and have an insane amount of picks. And they were bad for a few years. Now they have the most picks, number one seed, a bunch of talent. Like that sounds much better than a bunch of veterans. And then you're kind of good. We don't make it all the way. And then you need to totally rebuild anyway because these guys got too old. Like, you know, there's just other ways of team building that is just so much more. And again, like what the Braves have done it more in baseball stance of like so much young talent that they got for a long time that fit their philosophy. Like that's such a better way to build a team.
There's no one star that's going to fix this. There's no one star that will fix this. If you dig up prime Babe Ruth.
Yeah, exactly. OKC's a small market, so that makes it even easier for the Mets because the Mets also have the advantage of, okay, we're in New York.
They have the flexibility.
We can actually get some free agents. Like,
they have the flexibility
Oklahoma City
to jumpstart it.
No free agents. They did it all via trade and draft. Like, you know, if you have the right people making the right moves, you know, okay, the Celtics, when they didn't trade away their franchise of Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett and all those guys to get the picks for Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, okay. But, Yeah, you can't
asset management.
trade picks,
Have we ever
but
mentioned
still,
that?
you could trade veterans,
Oh,
star
boy.
players for prospects, and picks become
Yeah.
prospects in basketball.
And listen, I think that, I just, again, and you never know. Like, all these guys are lottery tickets, but what have we really been doing for the past 8 years? It's the same equivalent. They're just throwing money at lottery tickets because they come in here and they underperform. You want to do it again? I mean, we want to continue to do this again. Again, like I said, just talking about 9 years, but also I can go even more back. The reason why this team needs to rebuild this and go from the deepest core and finally admit that they need to rebuild is because this has been going on for 40 plus years.
Yeah.
They've been a doormat for 40 plus years. They've had some good seasons, but nothing sustained. 2006, Frank loves this team. All-time team. That thing fell out real quick.
They were old. They were really, really old.
They were really old. Like, that's what I mean. They never got the sustainable winner.
That if you just hear the names and you're like, oh my gosh, Pedro Martinez, Carlos Beltran, Carlos Delgado, Tom Glavine, like, you hear these names like, wow, these guys are a lot of guys go Hall of Fame and what have you. But then at that age point, there's a cap. Cliff Floyd, like, there was a lot of very nice players and things like that, but it just didn't last long.
It gelled. It gelled so
tough.
well as a team, but they didn't have that chemistry. And then you can also bring up the Yankees. I mean, Jeter left.
Yeah.
A-Rod left. Cano left.
They
Teixeira retired.
I mean, keep in mind the year where they traded away Andrew Miller and they traded.
But the reason why they didn't have
Torres.
such a strong rebuild is because they had a good farm system.
Yeah. The Aaron
Woo!
Judge and Gary Sanchez just showed up and took over very quickly.
Gleyber Torres came out of nowhere. He was like, what was he? He was a big international prospect.
Yeah, Chapman trade.
Then he shot up the
Yankees sold that
prospect
1 year.
boards. Yeah. Gio Urshela was a big. I mean, no, he wasn't a prospect for them, but no, I mean, they built it from the ground up. I mean, but they had the resources to do that. The Mets have that as well. So maybe it's possible they don't compete next year. They don't compete this year. But they need to put an actual process in place, which Andy Martino loves. They need to put an actual plan in place. And if that does mean sucking for a few years, so be it. Because they've sucked for a few years anyway. I mean, we're all still standing, right? I mean, I don't know if the Mets have killed anyone. They've come close. But we're still going to be here, no matter if they're good or not. Yeah. So, we're still going to be here, whether we're bitching about it or whether we like it or not. We're still going to be here. So, if that means they have to suck for the next 4 years or 5 years, if that means we get a sustainable winner that's in the playoffs every year, doesn't deal with this drama of, oh, is this guy going to throw his glove into the crowd at any moment? And there you go. I mean, yes.
Yeah.
This is a good point right here. By caution, high waves ahead right here. He said, depends on how you look at it. The Braves and Dodgers choking in so many postseason is the LOL. Plus, it's probably worse to their fans because how much they were strung along. That's
true. At least both of them have a World Series.
But they make the postseason every year.
Yeah, the Braves have a ring. The Dodgers have a COVID ring. But listen, I'd take a COVID ring over not seeing one since '86. Like, I don't like. They have rings. We don't. Like, it's different.
Yeah, and listen, the Braves did win their. I mean, you can't really say about the Braves won a ring. They won a ring in 2021 without their best player. Let's not add that without their best player. So, that's what good organizations do.
Yeah,
they are able to build.
The Dodgers won the World Series when there weren't fans in attendance. Well, I mean, it was limited capacity, but still.
A COVID ring.
Yeah.
A ring that cures COVID. I think that, at one point you have to put those points in mind. And I think that it may be hard. It may be a tough discussion to have. I get it. Yeah. But when you've built up 40 plus years of this, of constant futility, of we don't know who's going to eat the next day, basically. I mean, that's how it's been the feeling. We don't know who's going to get injured. We don't know who's going to get traded, who's going to get this, who's going to just stop performing.
Who's going to throw their glove?
You got to build that stuff from within.
Like,
who's going to throw their glove in the crowd? Who's going to high-five the fans after their first career home run and then release a rap album of saying a bunch of slurs? Do you want this drama every year?
Oh, my God.
I mean, this is the way to do it, to get rid of it, but it's a long-term thing. They don't. And this is, again, the one point that we will, until we'll move on to my man Tylor Megill. But Gabriel puts it perfectly. Gabriel Mendez. The Mets have no choice. They have dragged this thing out for way too long. Think that they could build a winner with Diamond Dynasty. It has not worked out. You cannot survive like this. You just can't. Okay. Now, speaking of surviving, Tylor Megill was an absolute menace this week against the Dodgers. It was foiled by the Mets, just being the Mets. But Tylor Megill, he came back from the injured list to play Cleveland. He looked pretty good. And then against the Dodgers, a really good team, one of the best teams in all of baseball, the man freaking shoved. And this was probably the best we have seen Tylor Megill. And I want to call it some peak drip. Okay?
Oh,
7 innings pitched, 3 hits, 0 earned runs, 1 walk, 9 strikeouts, 14 whiffs, 98 pitches. We are looking at a 7-pitch mix now with Tylor Megill. So for those of you who are listening, on the screen, we've got a bunch of pitch metrics and everything, the movement, the spin, the velocity. Let's just say that the one thing that can point out here is vertical approach angle. We've talked about this before. This make or breaks careers, pretty much. The ball just basically, no matter how good of stuff it is, it can just basically fly right into the barrel and ruin a player's career. When you're looking at a VAA under -5, which is vertical, which is going down. Down is the negative. Up is the positive. But when you have a vertical approach angle of 4.8 and you have an extension of 7.5 feet, that is 100th percentile extension. You do want your VAA to be either hovering around 4.5. But from that release point, from that release height that he has, from being 6'7" behemoth, that is incredible, okay? And he is pretty much touching 96, 97 with ease. And from that perceived velocity, from that ridiculous extension, you're pretty much seeing, from the hitter's perspective, in 60 and a half feet, from perceived velocity, you're pretty much seeing this guy sit 99 from his hand. And that's how good it's looked. Not to mention the splitter has graded out fairly well. I'm glad finally he added a cutter. Thank God. He needed for that to bridge between his slider. He's also thrown in a sweeper and a curve. This guy has a kitchen sink now. And it's all grading out as plus stuff. The cutter can be a little bit better, but he does have a little bit extra velocity. He does need a little bit more movement there to tunnel things a little bit well, but you'd kind of just need that cutter for the slider and the sweeper to separate all this. So when you look at this, Tylor Megill put on a peak performance. He put on peak drip, okay? We don't know what that consistency is going to look like with him because that's always been a problem. But one thing I will say, and Frank, I'll go to you, of course. That is the best I have seen Tylor Megill in a long, long, long time. And I saw little shades of it against Cleveland. Still had to get a few competitive pitches in there. But that was very, very, very impressive. And I think that if he can build on that, we're looking at a really good member of this rotation. And that's the Tylor Megill that I've always expected him to be. to, if he's actually consistent. That's why I have a soft spot for him. That's the main reason why, what you saw against the Dodgers.
Yeah, I mean, I think seeing, the average velo is one thing, but there are some times where that it is above that. Like he has been getting a couple of nice high velocity outputs. Obviously not the 99 from opening day against the Nationals a couple of years ago. But yeah, at this point, with Megill, the main concern is just the health. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Because he can put together nice starts. Like we've seen him have good outings, and these particular ones, like especially against Dodgers, was very good. And like Caution mentioned, I love the strikeouts. I think with how bad this infield defense has been, they need strikeout pitchers. Like that is their only chance, because we've seen guys have good outings be ruined by the team not being able to make routine plays, be ruined by not being able to throw out base runners. Like there's just so many different ways that they lose ball games. So if you strike the batters out, then you're doing everything you possibly can as a pitcher. He's going deeper into games too, which is something this rotation needs. This bullpen needs it more so. This way,
7 innings coming off of injury, and your second start coming off of injury. That's incredible, especially for Tylor Megill, who we've seen struggle to get out of the third or fourth inning before. So let's just say that.
And, with the way baseball is played, the old saying, the new saying now is 7 is the new 9. So anytime it doesn't seem like a big deal to the old school fan, but nowadays pitchers going 7 is not common. So, and doing the lineup that has, as we know, the Mookie Betts and Ohtani and Freeman, like that's really saying something. I think for me, one of the other parts that I like is that while I may not know too much about the stuff plus and vertical approach and horizontal spray stuff like that, I like the arsenal. I like the amount of pitches that he's throwing. I think that
more weapons, more kills.
Exactly.
More weapons, more kills.
It translates to good things as a pitcher where, let's say you don't have a certain pitch going for you. Well, that's okay. I have my sweeper. I have my cutter. Like I still have a few other things I could do. That's one of the things that, made DeGrom so good, is that it's like, okay, well, I don't have my slider today. I'm gonna have to use the fastball. Like, you have to be able to approach a game in a lot of.
I don't have my slider today. When did DeGrom not have his slider? I mean,
2015 the postseason.
Let's not. 2020. All right, yeah, I get it.
Okay, so but still, just having other options, because you can't approach a start the same way every time. Like especially, and that's what's going to help you if you're a pitcher that struggles third time through the order, fourth time through the order. If you have some other things that you could show and that you kind of mess up their game plan and their approach, what's in their tablet as far as what their thought process is, if you're able to do things like that, it gives you a big advantage. So I really like what I've seen from him. And, obviously a 6-man rotation would be really nice to keep these guys fresh and healthy. But I think it's definitely been very encouraging. I just want to see him stay healthy, because I feel like if we could just see that, it will actually allow us to evaluate this guy, because like as soon as we see him start to do well, then he gets hurt, and it's a matter of trying to get back to that form. But he's looked very good coming off of this injury, so I'll definitely give him that. I've definitely been impressed what I've seen, and what they need. I've said earlier, they need some good news. Like they need a young piece to really step up, and he's been here a few years now, so it's really becoming a make or break, not only for the Mets but also for his career. Like you could get real good money, like the infamous Brody Van Wagenen quote. Zach Wheeler got paid for having a really good second half. Well, as a starting pitcher, that's how it goes. Like, for Megill, for himself,
it is expensive.
Yeah, like it's a very expensive position. So he needs it for himself as much as the Mets need it as a team too.
Yeah, I think that the overall command of his stuff has looked a lot better. And, I think that, overall, I don't know if I'm frozen on the screen.
You're frozen on my end, yeah.
Yeah, but you can hear me. So I'll probably rejoin or something. But I think that overall, the overall command and the overall quality of his pitches have looked so much.
All right, well, it looks like Carson dropped out. But, Gabriel, I love what you're saying here. This is kind of what I'm hoping too, is that we're seeing these young guys stepping up. Hopefully, like we've seen Christian Scott. We have a couple guys on the way. Blade has looked really good. You have Megill. Hopefully, Senga gets healthy, and then again, like you insert some free agent instead of signing 4 guys, just get like one back end piece that kind of could eat some innings, and like that's how you build a winner in a very quick amount of time, because the names that you've listed here, most of these guys are already on the team. So, like, again, the best team the Mets had obviously it was a
starts with
2015
pitching.
team about the
Yeah.
starting pitching that was young. If the Mets could, they're not going to replicate that. Like they're not going to have DeGrom and 2015 Harvey and a really good Noah and everything like that. And they never even had a healthy Wheeler. That's crazy. That team went to World Series without a healthy Wheeler. But like they're not going to have that. But that is the best way that you could build a winner fast, because it's like, okay, you have cheap, young, controllable starting pitching that's really good, that's keeping you in games. Now you could pay for a few big bats that can carry an offense, and you could be a consistent playoff team. So they have a chance with the young pieces that they have, but they need these guys to be healthy, and they need them to do it on the major leagues. So like, we've seen good stuff from a lot of these guys in the minors. So, obviously take their time, but they're moving through the system pretty quick this season. I mean, we're in May and these guys are in AAA already. So I think they're going to be here soon. So I'm excited about that.
And that's the way to evaluate it. I mean, again, like I said, if they do suck for the next few years, you want to see these young guys come up here. And to be honest, I've really come to that point where I said, I'd really come to that point as to where I said, like, I don't really care what the product looks like on the field. I just want to see the plan moving ahead in place, whether it is seeing these young guys, seeing the new guys on the field. That's the best way that they can build this thing up and not rush it by just throwing money at whoever breathes. And I understand that may sound like a small market team, but they really haven't had any success as looking like a big market team. So why don't we start small? Let's do that. And listen, this is a comment from Junior Swingman. He's saying, how many rehab games do you think Alvarez will play before he's back? And I do obviously want to get into the injuries. But with Alvarez, I'm going to say it's probably going to be a week. Yeah. It's going to be either a week or maybe a week or a few days. He'll be back. He'll definitely be back at the pace that he's going. We all know he's chomping at the bit to come back, no matter how bad the team is. And we can't wait to see him back, because it definitely was an impact to lose him. I wouldn't say the entire season got derailed with him going, but he is a big factor, not only just offensively, where we know that he could break out at any point, but defensively, it's taken a hit. The pitching is definitely taken a hit from the overworking, from the production. Whether you use a six-man rotation or not, they are just sluggish, the pitchers. They are really just slumped over right now, and you really, really just don't know. And yes, Alonso is not in the lineup today. I'm going to pop that up right now from somebody who just said that in chat. I'm not sure who it was. But let's go to the injury report. I'll pop this up on the screen. Kodai Senga, he did play light catch / soft toss on Wednesday afternoon at Citi Field, and he was shut down for 3 to 5 days after receiving the cortisone injection last week. The tricep tightness, we still don't really have a timeline there, and we'll see what happens there. And obviously, somebody mentions it in the chat. Francisco Alvarez to begin a rehab assignment today in Binghamton, which I have the minor league package, the minor league TV. So I'm definitely going to be watching that because I think it will probably be a little bit more entertaining than tonight's game. Target return is obviously on pace ahead of schedule, as Anthony DiComo tweeted out, mid to late June, of course. So definitely in a few weeks, we should see him on the field again. And then, of course, more hits, but was pretty much overshadowed by the whole situation with Jorge Lopez and the Mets basically getting swept out of their own building by the Dodgers. Edwin Diaz was placed on the 15-day injured list due to a right shoulder impingement, and he first began starting feeling that discomfort in his shoulder over the weekend, and he is eligible to return on June 10th. We'll see what happens there, obviously, with his struggles throughout the entire season to get back from that injury. And, of course, Pete Alonso, the latest news. He's not in the lineup tonight versus Arizona, but he is day-to-day with the x-rays / the CT scan that they needed for confirm. We're both negative. He obviously exited yesterday's game after getting hit on the hand by a 93-mile-an-hour fastball. You also have some minor league news as well. Jet Williams, he was dealing with wrist soreness for the past 5 weeks. He's not played since April 20th, and he was just diagnosed with a TFCC sprain in his right wrist, and he received a cortisone shot last week, and he's expected to get a second injection after that soreness did not subside last week. And surgery probably could be an option if the follow-up injection does not relieve any of the soreness in his wrist. And we're expected to get an update on that regarding his health and regarding his season going down the line in about 7 to 10 days. So we'll see what goes on with that. One of the Mets' top prospects. In terms of the Mets' injuries, I think that the main it's not controversial, but in terms of the Mets' injuries, in terms of what's going on with the health of these players, I think that Edwin Diaz is probably the more shocking, because obviously it was not an arm injury that he went through that he's trying to recover from. I'm not trying to accuse anybody of lies, putting conspiracies out there. Is this Phantom IL? Is it not? Are they trying to kind of put him in this rehab thing that he didn't get? Are they trying to ready him up? I don't know. Not sure. What do you think about that, Frank? Because that's...
It was very sudden. I mean, that's something that is concerning to me, especially if it wasn't like immediately following an outing either. Like, it's not like, he was taken out of a game early or something like that. Like, his shoulder was bothering him. It did feel kind of out of nowhere. I feel like we just haven't gotten much context as far as like when did he start feeling the pain, like and things like that. At this point, whatever they need to do to get him to kind of do what he needs to do is what needs to happen. They paid him too much money for him to pitch like this. Like they paid him with the intention of this guy's going to be locked down for us. He's not going to be that same guy from a couple years ago, but he's still going to be one of the best. He has not been that. They just built the bullpen with the intention of like, at least we have Diaz in the ninth and he's going to close it. They need that because obviously Lopez is gone, but Ottavino, oh dear man, he was. He's the reason why Lopez had to come in that game, because he was just so awful. I mean, they're just in a spot right now where it's like they need Diaz. Like, he's here for the long term. So if they have to put him on a Phantom IL to get him right, that's what they have to do. I mean, they really need him to get going. I hope it's not an actual injury, because right shoulder, like, that's your throwing arm. So that's concerning. That's the Drew
Smith injury that he gets every year. So.
Like, anytime your pitcher has a right shoulder issue, that's not good. So again, I hope it's like not a fake injury, but like that it's not long term, and that whatever it is, it just kind of leads him to getting everything sorted out. And especially, it's very interesting. We had the whole conversation of like, do you leave him as the closer and whatever? They used him much earlier in the game, and then within a couple of days, he was back in the ninth inning in a safe situation because of the state of the bullpen. So they've tried a few different things. They haven't been able to quite find it yet. And now it's just only getting tougher with Lopez being essentially fired.
Yeah, I think that, and this is a comment from Brad here, and this is not to go after you whatsoever here, because I get it, wanting to move a lot of pieces here. And he said the Mets need Diaz to get right so they can trade him and hope he opts out in 2025. He ain't opting out. No reliever is turning down like, what is it, 15 million or 16 million with him being his structure contract. He is not going to opt out unless he has a season where he comes out 70 times, does not give up out a single run. That's when he will opt out of his contract. It's not going to happen. He's going to be here for his entire contract, and I'm glad that he will be, to be honest, because obviously we know that I'm a huge Edwin Diaz fan. I've been since the beginning of time when everybody wanted him thrown under a bus. I personally think that he will get right. He is going to get right. He's going to get back to that. But again, I've said this before, I don't know how long that's going to take. And to be honest, with this whole rebuild in the back of our mind right now, I'm fine with him taking that time to do it. Again, I think that I'm looking at the long term, the internal long term. And what we have going on right here, whatever they're stuck to, whatever they can release, whatever they can get rid of, Diaz isn't one of them. So I think that Diaz is going to be here. for his entire contract, and I'm rooting for him to get back right. It was unconventional. It was unconventional to give a closer that much money. We knew it from the beginning, and it's taken a turn for the worst. And I'm hopeful that he can get back to it, but it's going to take a while. It really is going to take a while because I still see the shades of the Edwin Diaz that he was, but he really has had a really tough time putting it all together. And for that, with the state that the team is in, I'm not completely just throwing him under the bus right now. He's been one of the reasons why we've lost games, yes, but he's not the reason. And it goes beyond just a couple players to throw under the bus. As much as I want to go after somebody like Jeff McNeil, who I've, despised for years, longer than anybody has, he's not the only problem here. There's way too many cooks in the kitchen that are cooking up food poisoning. Okay. Now, speaking of also injuries, I just want to give a quick note here. Emmys, he asked, where is Fujinami right now? He was put on the injured list for a right shoulder strain. You weren't really missing much in terms of what was going on in AAA. Yeah. Horrendous. Pitching like he was hitting batters, walking batters. Command is still a mess. So
yeah, if you think
that doesn't look like something that's going to be here long.
Yeah, if you think the walks on his current team are bad, he is just next level.
Everything's just a mess for him.
And it's especially bad to have a walk problem on this particular team with how much they struggle holding base runners on. He would be impossible to use, and he's hurt anyway.
And it is a shame. It is a shame because I do believe that his overall pitch shape, because pitch shape is a big deal for me. I think his pitch shape's great, but he can't put it all together. It's just really been a struggle for him.
Yeah, and anytime a guy throws over 100, it's appealing on a team where nobody throws 100.
Absolutely. You can get away with a lot of things. And listen, they gave him a 1-year deal, $3 million, whatever, move on. I mean, I doubt they can get anything back for him, obviously with him injured in the minor league struggling, but you just bite the bullet on that one. It's $3 million. It's not like giving, $30 million on 10 a year to Jerry's Familia. But I will, I also want to address one other thing in this chat, which Gabriel Mendez asked earlier, when would you guys be down to take callers at some point? Eventually, we will be doing that. But not at this current moment. We're still kind of getting settled into the whole live thing. We still have a lot of things to do there, but I definitely see that happening towards the off season with a lot of transitional stuff, and there's going to be a lot of opinions going on. So yeah, we'll definitely have a live caller segment eventually, but not in the cards right now. If you're looking at it one day at a time. Now, we do have a few comments that came in here about Acuna. We did have a poll that was put in the chat, which I have to bring up because my entire thing crashed for some reason because my internet just likes to reset itself at the most annoying times possible. But we did have a poll in the chat basically asking if the Mets should call up Luisangel Acuna. And 63% of you guys said yes. 37% of you guys said no. So there's definitely, it's not a 50-50, but there's definitely a decent amount of people in here live right now. For those of you who have not voted on the poll, please go ahead. We'd love to hear your opinion. But there really has not been a real clear answer to this, because I think that, Luisangel Acuna definitely struggled to start off the season. But then there's also people that want to call him up because, once again, they don't really have a backup middle infielder right now with the Joey Wendell mess. And also with Jeff McNeil basically on his last legs right now, basically fighting to the point where, is he even like a everyday player, which we also can get into. But in terms of Luisangel Acuna, we're going to look at a graphic that I'm going to pop up here because we love wordplay here, or maybe I just do, called Sarah Cunha. Sorry. The last 20 games, he has really heated up. 815 OPS, which kind of is considered a little bit above average in that league. Hit a homer. We've seen a lot more extra base hits from him, not more one base outcomes. But you see for the first 30 games, he really, really struggled to hit AAA pitching, which was really not encouraging because AAA pitching does not have the biggest skill gap as compared to AA or even the lower levels. So it was concerning, but he has really started to heat up. And there was an article, I don't know if it was Tim Healy or if it was somebody else with the minor league, but they did talk about kind of changing up the mechanics a little bit of his hitting with Luisangel Acuna and kind of focusing a little bit more on quality of contact, which I love. I just love. And to be honest, I will tell you one thing. You still need a bigger sample. I do think you still need a bigger sample. You still need to see him kind of get his feet wet a little bit more. But I will say, in terms of what I've seen recently, and this could change at any point because you never know, because sustainability is everything in this game. One thing I will say, in terms of his tools, in terms of him starting to hit like this and kind of make these adjustments, he's kind of grown on me a little bit. He definitely has. I will say that. I still do think that at one point you might still have the concerns with the offense. But recently we have seen a more consistent lower half. I will say that. That's been one of my main things with him. The lower half, when he swings, his windup or whatever, that ain't his brother. Let's just say that. I think the offense is going to be a concern in the major leagues if they do call him up. I don't think he will be a good hitter. But as the 9-hole hitter, you obviously have to wait for your catchers to be reformed once Francisco Alvarez comes back. I'm not opposed to having Luisangel Acuna up here and batting 9th, because I think that at the end of the day, the tools can move the needle a little bit. If you have somebody who can give you a one-base outcome, he's a stolen base threat and he can take away the double play. I'd love to see the young kid run as much as he can because he's got fresh legs. Is there concern there? Yes. But I think that when you're talking about the middle infield stuff, where you're rostering both Beatty and Vientos, I think it's a thought. I definitely think it's a thought. I don't think it's as crazy. The numbers don't look great, but in terms of him batting 9th, him being the 9-hole hitter, chat, you guys can answer this too. Him being the 9-hole hitter, are you opposed to that or are you not? Frank?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth a shot. I think, especially considering the way McNeil has been playing on a daily basis. And I think also when you factor in Jeff's age, it just doesn't do him any favors. But the other part that I'm looking at too is that, we're talking about like, okay, we know obviously this year is not the Mets year and we need to focus more on the long term. And, we talked about if you're not really going to be doing that in free agency, it has to be from within. And I feel like you kind of need to see what you do have from within at some point. While it may not be today, it could be a couple months from now where you do call Acuna and just see, all right, how does he fare against major league pitching? What does it look like a little bit? You're not going to make the full batch say, oh, he could do it, or oh, no, he can't do it. But at least just get a glimpse as far as just to say, all right, well, how does it look when he is on the big league level? I think that based off the way this team is currently constructed and the struggles that they've had, I think that a young piece coming up and giving them a spark, especially the guys with stolen base threat, which is very exciting, gets everyone going. I think it's worth a shot. I mean, I think, with the way they've been playing, they're constantly losing. And like we said, we know McNeil's not the main problem, but he is a problem. So I think that, right now you have to at least try something to just see, does anything change? You know what I mean? Like you really have to got to figure out more so as far as what you focus on being like, okay, this is the main problem. We need to address that first. It's like you kind of have to know what you're working with. And, it's like, is he a fit on this team? Is he somebody you trade? You know what I mean? Like, there are a lot of things that need to be figured out, but I think also from the conventional standpoint is that, okay, yes, we do kind of need a middle infielder a little bit, especially the way Jeff's playing. And, Francisco is going to be bunting incorrectly with his fingers on the barrel of the bat and having the ball go right to his fingers. You're going to need someone else. There's doors that he can slam. Like, a lot of things can happen. But, I just think that it's something the Mets do have to consider. And what's weird to me is that they've just assembled this team in a weird way overall. I think that, the discussion of like, okay, is it Beatty or is it Vientos? The problem is that once they added JD Martinez on this team as a guy who does not own a fielding glove, and you already have DJ Stewart here, it just gets tough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they're just in a really bad situation where it's like, you want to see what Beatty does. You want to see what Vientos does. And I'm not even saying that DJ Stewart is doing bad. Like, he's been good. Like, he's actually has one of the better OPSs on the team. He has an approach that maybe a couple more players should have: swing at strikes and hit extra base hits. Like, those are quality things. But I think that if we're not in win now mode and we're looking at the long term, the young guys have to play. And JD Martinez, maybe if JD Martinez gets traded and you could just slide Acuna in there, that makes it easy because you still get Beatty playing time, you get Vientos playing time, and you get Acuna playing time. Maybe something like that. But I think if they were to do it like today, if they're still trying to evaluate Beatty, then DJ Stewart would have to be the guy that goes. That's my opinion, because I think, right now with Mark Vientos, very small sample size, but he's got the best numbers on the team right now in that small sample size offensively. You still have got to give Mark Vientos a full chance, and he still doesn't have that. He is still not playing every single day.
Here's another question I'm going to ask, and this is kind of derailing the entire conversation, but chat, let us know. DJ Stewart is 30 years old, okay? He is going to be a unrestricted free agent in 2028. Do you trade him? Could you trade him? I'm just saying,
it's tough. I mean, his glove isn't great to be starting in the outfield a lot in this particular ballpark. Maybe we could hide it.
I get he's been a good hitter for us, but is it really going to benefit if he's just wasting away here?
I don't know what his role is long term. That's the tough part, especially if
he's got tons of years of control.
If Vientos is going to be a DH, then it's tough for him. If Nimel's going to be in a spot and Gilbert's going to be in a spot, you only have one outfield spot left. And I would feel like they would add at least a free agent outfielder at some point. I feel like that's one thing they could use, even if it's not like in Juan Soto caliber, but somebody else in the outfield once Marte's contract is up. I feel like that's something they need to do because they don't really have too many other outfield prospects. Unless Alex Ramirez somehow really puts it together, there's not really many other outfielders coming. So, and there's this other possibility of Ronnie Mauricio. I mean, I think he's another big piece for the long term as far as if Ronnie's in the infield, then maybe Jet or.
If you want to talk about rebuilding, Ronnie Mauricio is the perfect guy to do it with.
Mm-hmm.
The perfect centerpiece to do it with.
Because
I'm not saying he's your franchise, but I'm just saying that's your centerpiece toolsy player that could definitely help you apply other positions,
Yeah, and I think that if you have Mauricio in the infield, and whether it's Beatty or Vientos, and then it's okay, now you may move Acuna or Jet to the outfield, and you have outfield like Nimmo, Jet, and Gilbert. I see more scenarios without DJ Stewart than with DJ Stewart. And again, it's not a knock on him per se specifically. Yeah. It's more so just the overall who's on this roster and who's in the minors as far as the long-term vision. It's tough to see that fit. It's hard in today's game with the universal DH to have a guy who's mostly a pinch hitter. And there's just not much.
All I can say is with the new stolen base rules, the Mets, they don't take advantage of winning in the margins like that. You can do that with Luisangel Acuna. And even if you did have those threats on the team, such as Bader or Tylor, they don't do it efficiently. Not to mention the team has struggled so much with runners in scoring position, but it's basically putting the team in a better position to avoid that double play. And I think that, overall, you can definitely just look at it as, in terms of the batted ball data with Luisangel Acuna in AAA, I'm looking at it right now. Most of everything I'm looking at is pretty much the average second baseman in the major leagues. Now, obviously, it's against AAA pitching, but I think that, especially with, if he is the stolen base threat he is, I'm seeing a lot, and I mean a lot of contact. Like, not Jeff McNeil level of contact at his very best, but I'm seeing a lot of contact, not a lot of swing and miss. There is a little bit of chasing, but I'm seeing a lot of contact where he's able to put the ball in play, get the bat on the ball. If he's able to do that, get on base, he takes away the double play automatically. Any one of those singles can turn into a double with his speed. So I think that's kind of how they need to look at it, as to where, can we win in the margins? Can we bring these guys that can win in the margins, and then we can get our big pieces going down the line? We have great, I think that as a collective unit, they have a lot of good hitters. They do. The Nimmo, I think Lindor's a good hitter. I think that Pete Alonso's a good hitter. JD Martinez, student of the game hitter. But they just don't have any of those other guys with those tools. If these guys hit a single, nothing is going to happen. Pete Alonso hits a single. This is why I just despise people who are like, oh, well, Pete Alonso's got to get his batting average up. What the hell does that even do for the team? He gets on base. He gets a hit. Okay, he brings up his batting average for the batting title he's so going to get. Like, what is that going to do? He's not going to steal. What does he have, 4 stolen bases? Just because he ran for, like, just the heck of it? Do you want Pete Alonso getting hurt trying to steal bases? Marte doesn't steal bases as much as he used to. He can't even do that. His lower half is diminished.
Lindor's
so
not
if they
stealing
can have
nearly
guys,
enough either.
What?
Lindor's not stealing nearly enough either.
Lindor doesn't steal as much either, to be honest. I mean, I think that if you can have a guy come in here and swipe 70 bases, sure. Why not? They can get a good jump. They're a good base runner. Sure. I think that Lindor's a good base runner. I don't think that he just has like the natural speed. He has good speed. He has plus speed. But they need to take advantage of what the athleticism is being provided in the game to win in those margins. And then they can look at these big bats. But they're way too far away from that. I think Luisangel Acuna is one of those pieces that probably could do that. I'm not big on him. I definitely am not. But you might as well see it. Might as well. I mean, he's what, 22 years old now?
He's 22, and obviously he's not the player
19.
Ronald is, but Ronald debuted at age 20. Like, yeah. He's not that young.
Well, Ronald was a massive international prospect.
Yeah, no, I mean, like Ronald's much better, but I'm just saying the age
is
not really an excuse as to why you're not calling him up.
Yeah, I mean, he does. It seems like, I mean, he said that he doesn't get on base at a higher clip, and this is a good point. As a whole, in the season, yes, and yes, he does not walk that much, and he would like to put the ball in play, but those are just like kind of the growing pains you got to go through. And if he's not chasing, he's not chasing, And, I think that it's important to get these guys the experience when the team's not going anywhere. Luisangel Acuna is 22 years old right now. He is like a month and 11 days younger than me. Jesus Christ, I'm old. And I think that with the plus speed, he's got to showcase those tools. And why not? Because you're guaranteed to get more value from that than what Jeff McNeil is going to do. Whether you think Jeff McNeil will be a great player again, he's going to win another batting title. Jeff McNeil is another one of those guys. He hits a single. Is he going to steal? Why the hell would he? Why the hell would he steal? He's had tons of lower body injuries. He's never been a stolen base threat. So, you're limiting your way and not taking advantage of these new rules in this game that help you win in the margins. So that's another one of those pieces that in the organization, the Mets do need to get younger and they need to get more athletic. Now, some news from Gabriel Mendez. I'm not sure. Is this anybody can confirm this? Nimmo has been scratched from today's lineup.
I see Mark Gooden tweeting about it as a joke.
No, that's just he's just.
Not quite seeing it anywhere else.
Nimmo is not in the line. Okay, well, the game starts at 7, so no Nimmo, no Alonso. Respect the tank, boys.
Nimmo's in the lineup though.
I'm not sure. Maybe it's just
he's batting third. I don't see a new lineup posted anywhere.
I don't know. I'm not sure, but and again, if these guys you want
to if it's good.
Okay, all right. Listen, we've all been fooled by it before.
Yeah.
That guy's a troll. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it gets old. Whatever. No, we don't blame you for that. Anyways, and then another thing we can put in here, which a tool we didn't discuss yet. How is Acuna defensively? I think he's good. I think he's all right. I don't know if the range is amazing, but he knows how to make the routine plays. Something I can't really say for most of the infielders on this team right now. So, I don't know. God. Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, so that read the first few words, you get fooled on that. So yeah, I think that and then there's also, the other guys that we have internally are right now, Marte ever lead off since he can steal. I think that they don't lead off Marte. That hasn't been a thought because I don't think they want him stealing anymore. Yeah. I think that, he's gotten a decent amount of stolen base. Like he has 8 this year. Nothing close to what, he was doing in what was it, Oakland. When he was in Oakland or whatever. Just let him go. But his sprint speed right now in the league, 24th percentile.
I also think their top priority is putting Lindor in a position where he could do something productive.
Yeah.
And I think it goes more so that whole point of like your most important players getting the most plate appearances, and the Lindor Alonso 1-2 gives you that.
I think that, Marte, he probably should be batting 9th once the catcher spot is cleared with Francisco Alvarez. He probably should be because he probably can put guys in scoring position for the top of the lineup, but that's, in a technical sense. Personally, I don't give a shit because I think that I don't even care if the Mets win or at this point because, like, I've just had it. But if they do get on the groove, they probably do want to set that up.
Marte's defense hasn't been another one where he is just
Marte's defense is the worst in all of baseball right now.
Yeah, like there's a difference between routine plays and just careless. Like he just doesn't look like he cares. Like he has no. I don't think you'll see him die.
He's so erratic with how he plays now.
He's.
There's been times where he looks like. There's been times where he looks like the best guy on the field, and he comes through with something amazing. Then there's some times where he's just playing with his head up his ass. Yeah, that's literally what he's so inconsistent in the way that he brings in that effort. And I'm not knocking on the guy because I think
one thing is for sure, you'll never see Marte throw his glove into the crowd because he doesn't care enough. That's for sure.
He's too swaggy. Yeah, but again, we're obviously selling low on Marte, and we're kind of talking about like how he has struggled. But overall, the batted ball data has been good for him. Like I think that the quality of contact, this chases are still there, the whips are still there. But I'm just saying, like,
problem.
It's quality of contact that has been really good for him. And like he does have trade value. You're going to have to cover some of his salary, obviously. But again, like we said earlier in this stream, let's not make our rivals better. Well, our rivals are already better, and they're going to be for the next 4 years. So if the Braves want him, they can take him. Give us a nice hitting prospect that's, give us a Jeremy Rodriguez that we got for Tommy Pham. Do that. Fine. Perfect. It's all yours. We'll pay it off. He's out of here. Clear a roster spot for a young guy to come in to evaluate for the future. Good with that. So anything else on this? We'll go to studs and duds. No? All right. Studs and duds of this series. There's been a lot of duds. There's been studs. There's been a lot that has gone on, as we have all said. Stud for you, Frank, what do you think?
Oh gosh, I mean, when you get swept, it is tough to pick someone, but I'll take him because before the game got out of hand, he did a really good job and did better than I expected. But Tomas Nido, I think he's just been a pleasant surprise the whole season. While the numbers themselves offensively aren't great, just the fact that he has been hitting more home runs than you'd expect, I think has just been encouraging, and really compared to what Omar Narvaez is giving you, who's getting paid much more.
Which is nothing. Yeah.
Nido has just been the better player on both sides. He actually throws out some base runners. So I just think overall he's been very solid.
Better offensively, better defensively than James McCann. Still. And they're both on the same payroll. Isn't that crazy? All right. Well, I got to go with Tylor Megill. It was a great start. I mean, I think I had him last week. It was even better. I hope he continues this because we all know how much of a soft spot I have for Tylor Megill because I know that he can give you performances like that. He can give you those solid, mid-rotation starts. I mean, I know I always call him an ace or whatever because that was kind of what he looked like on that opening day start 2 years ago. But at the end of the day, like we've said all the time, looking towards the future, pitching's expensive. And if you can get a controllable arm to give you that type of quality, whether it is Tylor Megill, whether it is Jose Budo, I'd love to see him get called up eventually again, which I still don't know what he's doing in AAA right now. He just won, pitcher of the week or whatever in the International League in AAA. But yeah, I think that, with yours, with Tomas Nido, I mean, you can't really fill the void with Francisco Alvarez because of how much of an impact he makes, but he's done a decent job doing it. Let's just say that. He's played like a backup catcher for us, and that's all we can really ask. And at the end of the day, with Tomas Nido, I mean, both of them are going to be free agents, but Narvaez has got to be the guy that goes. It has to, because you just don't see him connect with any pitchers whatsoever. It's just it's a nightmare. And then he's nothing of note offensively. So Nido, Megill, those are our studs. Duds, there's a lot more. What do you think?
It's between two guys, but one guy's not here anymore. So I'll take Adam Ottavino. Between the first game and yesterday's game, he's just been not good. It's just not getting out of it. He's another one where it's like, I'm surprised more teams don't bunt against him because he just can't move. And like, you know what I mean? Lanky. That it would just be an automatic hit for a lot of hitters just because he'd do what he did when they did hit that bunt to him. So the fact that, the Mets were in a game yesterday and this guy just comes in and can't even get out of the inning, it was just awful. I mean, it's just so many hits. It's been tough to watch. And, the expectations weren't high given the age, but, they're with Diaz, like I said, with Diaz out and now Lopez out, and even Garrett has been inconsistent lately. Yeah. They're done. They're going to be counting on Ottavino to be a high leverage piece. And obviously Brooks Raley's gone. So it's like he's going to have a big role on this team, but he hasn't done well to really warrant it this season. So I'm just concerned more so about with the state the team is in right now. We're going to see more of Ottavino in big spots, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, what's done is done, and I'm going to put him in as my dud because it regards to what happened during the series, and he was a Met when that happened. So I'm going to give it to Jorge Lopez. I mean, that's just unacceptable. That just can't happen. I don't care how bad the team is. That is just unprofessional. And speaking of Jorge Lopez, he did post a full-on apology on Instagram to the Mets organization. Sure. And anybody who follows him on Instagram or on Twitter, it's all over Twitter, the screenshots, you can go and read that. And I wish him well. But what's done is done. And that just can't happen. It's unacceptable whether, you think the team is bad or not, or he's telling the truth or not. It just looks really bad on the organization. And I think that the Mets really I think that they handled it well in terms of after it happened. And I'm glad to see there was no nonsense after that. But overall, it just shows that there's more problems with this organization than just the performance on the field. And we've talked about it throughout this entire episode. So for those of you who've missed a little bit of it or did not see, make sure to rewind. For those of you who are listening as well, we'll give out some parting words going into the Arizona series, which is about to start up as we're recording this in an hour. We will have Christian Scott on the mound, and I advise everybody to watch the game for only Christian Scott tonight. Just do that. Don't let the offense ruin your night. Maybe pop in the minor league game with Francisco Alvarez. Just look at the young guys. Focus on the young guys. Focus on the future. Because the last thing we want to do is just have the Mets completely just ruin it for you. And then there's some that want to complain, but at this point, I'm all out of complaining. I'm all out of screaming and yelling. I just want the Mets get into the process of actually becoming a sustainable organization. All right, so Frank, anything for your last words before we take you out like Old Yeller? No, I'm just joking.
I mean, don't get swept. Make routine plays, field ground balls. You know what I mean? Just play the game the right way, and good things can happen if you just do the normal things correctly. That's it. Don't play like dummies. At least
11 games under 500. You're 6 games out of the wild card. I understand that they were pretty deep into it in 2019, and everybody wants to screw onto that narrative. Right now, at the trending direction, it's not looking good. So right now, I'm probably going to be watching a little bit more minor league games, as we will probably have a little bit more minor league content coming up with the draft and everything. For those of you who are wondering where Rode or Andrew are, Andrew obviously will be available for probably one of these towards the week, and then Rode is most likely going to be featured in more videos than streams. We kind of just decided that maybe we just have a little bit less heads every single week, talking heads every week, and we'll be able to get a little bit more deeper of the conversations. We'll obviously have some other special guests on here going forward, but other than that, the Mets, we can say don't suck, but at this point, whatever. Make sure to hit the subscribe button if you have not already. Turn on the post notifications for those of you on playback, and the audio version of this episode will be available on all of our listening platforms at 9 a.m. tomorrow, which as well as follow us on TikTok and on Twitter /X, whatever you want to call it. Frank's post game after today's game will be up there, of course. They're getting longer and longer and longer, and I'm just letting them go. I'm not cutting out that much anymore. I'm just letting them go because it's gotten to that point. So no matter what, no matter how bad the team's going to be, we're still going to be here. So they cannot knock us down if they haven't knocked us down already, because there's always some stuff to talk about at the top of your lungs. But other than that, we'll see you guys next episode, which will be after the Diamondback series. Let's go Mets, and peace out. See you guys next time.